We'll give it a few minutes for everyone to join us. Thank you to those who are here presently. We will get started at our info session very shortly. Okay. Commissioner Handerhan, do you want to introduce our guest this evening?
Sure. Thanks, Chair Harris. Good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Handerhan. I'm the commissioner for ANC 1B01, which represents LaJoy Park, and also serve as the chair of the Economic Development Committee. And kind of in that latter capacity, I'm really pleased to introduce our special guest tonight, who will be the main feature of our info session from 6:30 to 7. And that is Lindsay Hicks with District Bridges in the U Street Main Street. So just before I turn it over to Lindsay, I think a lot of people know what District Bridges are, but they are an organization that runs 7 of the 26 Main Street programs here in Washington, D.C. Their mission is to enrich neighborhood vitality by bringing community engagement and economic development opportunities to individuals, businesses, and organizations so that they can thrive together. So they're in a couple spots in Ward 1, but really for tonight, we're going to be focusing on the U Street corridor. And Lindsay is the pretty new, basically brand new U Street Main Street program manager. So this is a really critical community leader role in ANC 1B. And we're so thrilled that District Bridges has hired Lindsay for this role, and we're excited that she could join us tonight. And I know she is wearing 2 hats, I think, at a sporting event for her kids or family, and so we're just really appreciative that you're here this evening. I'll turn it over to you, and we'll leave plenty of time for questions the community might have.
Awesome. Thank you for Commissioner Handerhan, and thank you all for having me this evening. And again, I do apologize. I'm on double duty, so I'm outside at the baseball game, so hopefully you don't hear too much background noise. But my name again, it is Lindsay Hicks, and I am the Main Street manager for U Street. Main Street, I believe most of you all are familiar, so I won't go into a spiel, but it is a national program that is across America, and we are funded in part by the Department of Small and Local Business Development here in DC. And U Street Main Street, of course, is under the District Bridges umbrella, as Commissioner Handerhan has shared. And I've been in this role for a little over a month, about almost 2, and it has been a good and energetic couple of months. A lot of the business owners have been very receptive to having someone back in this role. I understand that it was vacant for a little while. So it's been nice to connect with the business owners thus far. I am not new to the Main Street program. In fact, I've been given this whole little spiel since I've been back around, but I used to be an intern while I was an undergrad at Howard University with the 14th and U Main Street. This was it was exactly 20 years ago, so I won't, don't try to guess my age, please. But it's a very full circle moment for me to be back with the Main Street program. And it is in a different format, being under the District Bridges umbrella and different boundaries. So, we are mostly in Ward 1 and slightly in a part of Ward 2. Our boundary goes from where Industrial Bank and Solly's is, of the 1000th block of U Street, all the way up to the 17th Street. And then we have businesses that fill in on like 14th Street, parts of T Street, and areas just around the U Street corridor. So basically my role as a Main Street manager is to provide technical assistance and support to the small businesses in the area. We do that through various means, but mostly it's through promotion, economic development, and communication and vitality for our businesses. And what we want to do is ensure that the small businesses have the resources that they need to thrive, especially in this current economy, and considering how businesses in the area have either survived through COVID and are kind of rebounding still from the pandemic, or whether they've been around several years, longer than I've been around, like our legacy businesses like Ben's Chili Bowl and Industrial Bank. So we're happy to, have the legacy businesses in the area, but also recognize that there are new businesses in the area that we don't forsake their contribution to our community. And while we want to build on the historical legacy of the U Street area, we also want to embrace the newness that comes along with the community that's currently in the U Street area. So a part of my role is, how do we bridge, that cultural heritage, cultural identity of U Street with the current environment. And so I think so far we're doing a good job of that. Again, it's still pretty early on for me, but I've been making sure that I connect with some of the newer businesses and that they know that we are here to support them as well as the legacy businesses, because I understand that sometimes the legacy businesses get all the shine. And also, U Street is unique in that it kind of has two identities. There's, the very much so thriving nightlife with the restaurants and bars, especially on the lower parts of U Street. And then as we go towards the upper part, it's a little more common, a little more retail based. There's a couple bars, but and more gyms, more health and wellness businesses along that side. So it's also marrying those two dynamics as well, the nightlife as well as the day life of the U Street area. So some of the things we're working on, I know I gave a long spiel, I hope I didn't bore you. Some of the things we're working on, we have just kicked off our neighborhood strategy council. I know Commissioner Cedric has shared that he is on an NSC council for another Main Street neighborhood. And so what the Neighborhood Strategy Council does is act as a board of directors for the Main Street. But because of the district bridges model, we have a formal board that's over district bridges, but each Main Street has a Neighborhood Strategy Council or an NSC. And the NSC is a non-fiduciary responsible board, but they do engage like a typical nonprofit board does, helping with directing the programming and concerns of the community. So we did kick off our meeting last month. We had 3 members who are a part of the U Street Neighborhood Association that joined us. We are recruiting more board members currently. We need to have our board comprised of business owners as well as residents, as well as community organizations. So we are currently recruiting board members so that we make sure we have representation for each of those areas. And but we did have a good first meeting. We will be meeting again on the 21st of this month. And I will share that information with Commissioner Henderhan, and so that it's out there if anyone is interested in attending. It is open. And so some of the things that we're working on, we have exciting things that we're working on. Our first event coming up is our Dog Day Sidewalk Sale. It is something that U Street has done before. It's not necessarily a new program. We're partnering with our Logan Circle Main Street to put on this event. It will be August 5th, I believe it's a Saturday. And what Dog Days sidewalk sale does is help to promote the retail businesses in the area. So they offer typically special promotions, and we'll have vendors and pop-up shops, along the corridor. So that's what we'll do for Dog Days. And then our fun event, which happens citywide, but it's happening on U Street, is the Art All Night event. Art All Night is a event sponsored by the mayor's office, where we have entertainment, music, and art throughout the community. And so we engage business owners to stay open a little later. And usually they have activations where people are either doing live art, performing live music, or some sort of mural to just celebrate the art in the district. So we are excited about that opportunity to host the Art All Night on U Street. We are already engaging businesses and artists to participate. Art All Night will take place on September 30th, and that is from 6 to 11 p.m. That's a Saturday. And yeah, so we're excited about that, and we appreciate the ANC support with these events as well. So that's all we have coming up for right now. Some of the other things I'll just mention briefly that we do provide small business grants to the small business owners in the community. We are wrapping up a grant cycle currently, in which we are awarding the businesses nominal amounts, usually up to $4,000. But we also learned that even just $4,000 goes a long way for these small business owners, and they can use it for help with accounting or facade improvements or interior improvements. So we're happy to be able to award this amount to help support the small businesses. One of the other things we have that we like to do is what we call business checkups, where we really sit down with businesses and go through the gambit of their business model, their goals, and how we can make sure that we help them achieve their goals. So I know I've talked a lot. We have going on and on. But if you have any questions about like specific programming that we do or anything we support, I do want to mention this. There are a couple concerns that I found that our small businesses have, and one of them, of course, is security, especially amongst the restaurant and bar owners on the lower portion of the corridor. And so we are working to find solutions to help kind of alleviate those concerns, and are coming up with different ideas on how we can implement better security for that area. So that's one of the concerns I'm hearing from business owners. Two, unfortunately, and there's not much we can really do about this, but the new law about enforcing the ban of e-cigarettes and flavored tobacco. DC is a pretty smoke-friendly city, but it's starting to lean towards being friendly towards cannabis users and not necessarily tobacco users, which is pretty interesting to me. But some of the small business owners who provide those products are, a little concerned about how that's going to affect their business as well. So that's some of the issues that business owners have raised to me. Of course, parking is always one, but I tell them, you're in DC, I don't know what else there's no parking. But yeah, that's pretty much that's pretty much it. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. And again, thank you all for having me this evening.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. That's awesome, and I think was definitely a number of things that I was hoping you'd cover. So just to recap, you're gonna send some information around the board meetings, and then also if you're recruiting new members, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then is there a way that folks can sign up for like a listserv to get notifications about the events?
Yes, if you go to mainstreet.org and sign up for our newsletter, you will be abreast of all the happenings on the U Street corridor that concern the small business owners. There's a newsletter that's targeted for the small businesses specifically. It goes out weekly, but you can subscribe to it just so you know what's happening as well. And then there's also a community newsletter that goes out monthly that's more based on sharing the info of how the community can support the U Street corridor.
I get the monthly newsletter and it's great. So
Awesome.
And we'll drop the link in the chat so other folks can do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. So if any commissioners have questions, could you raise your hand? Commissioner Kensick.
I just want to commend you on everything you're doing. It's amazing. I know it cannot be easy, so we appreciate you. And I also want to say I love your earrings. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. It's an interesting job. It's a very, kind of niche job, but we do see how our support makes a difference to the small business owners. And again, it's something I am passionate about. That's how I came back around to it 20 years later. So I'm happy to support the businesses. Yeah.
Commissioner Lakatos?
No, I just want to say thank you for coming, and I would encourage members of the public who are following along. I was also a member of the Neighborhood Strategy Council before my time as commissioner, and it helped, inspire my community involvement that got me to where I am now. But thank you for everything you do.
Awesome, thank you. Come on back.
One unpaid volunteer job for a lot of work.
Is enough. I understand.
Great. Are there any community members that have questions or comments? You raise your hand, we can take you off mute. In the interim, Chair Harris.
Thank you so much for joining us again tonight. Glad to have you here. I am wondering, so I know that a lot of businesses are looking for help. They're, I think, struggling with hiring. Do you all provide any kind of centralized job board that businesses can at least reach out and say, oh, we're looking for this type of help? Or even some of our community members who might be looking for other roles, is there something that they can check?
That is a great idea. So I have a twofold kind of answer to that. One, so we currently don't have anything formal in place, but we are looking to partner with organizations who do workforce development training to seek hiring. We know lots of our restaurants, they have high staff turnover. And so we want to engage people who are interested in hospitality. So we're working with another DC department, the name is escaping me right now, who works with young men who are re-entering society to provide job training that we're working with. And then we also are in the process of partnering with the Workforce Investment Council. I believe that's what it's WIC. Might be incorrect. Please forgive me. But they also do workforce development work, and they have partnered with District Bridges to provide a talent acquisition development program. And so we're working with small businesses who sign up. There's a pilot cohort that will begin here soon, where the businesses will go through a series of training to learn how they can hire in this post-COVID kind of world we're living in. And so the training will surround information about how they can hire and what to look for, so that they have the employee and staffing needs covered within their small businesses. So that's happening fairly soon. We had an application process for that for businesses to sign up, and businesses were able to receive a stipend for participating. it closes out tomorrow is the last day to sign up for the cohort, and then we'll select a number of businesses. And that was open to all businesses across the city. It wasn't designated just for the Main Street businesses that District Bridges covers. So yeah, that'll be another way to help the small businesses gauge how they can help hire and in the current environment. And from that, we hope that we'll be able to do like career fair type events where we can bring the people directly to the businesses.
Yeah, I think that would be great. I think too, partnering with some of the other organizations on the ground. I know that last year ANC 1B sponsored an event called Jobs Not Guns in Ward 1, and it was a job fair. Well, one part of it was a job fair. There were other parts to it, but that would be interesting for you all to partner there too, and especially to connect some of the businesses that you work with. One other question for you, and sorry, I didn't keep my hand up, can you remind us the kind of span of U Street Main Streets, just so there are any commissioners who are thinking of businesses that could join kind of your advisory council, we can kind of push them your way?
Sure. So we cover from the 1000th block of U Street, starting with where Industrial Bank is on one side and Solly's is on the other. And we go up to the 1700 block of U Street. That doesn't include the 1700 block it's up to. So 1600 block is technically the last part of our parameter. Where Vita Fitness is, Exiles Bar is, that area is where our boundaries set. And then on 14th Street, we go up to Florida Avenue, and then down to T Street. And then there's like a couple other little businesses sprinkled along in there, but basically if they identify as the U Street corridor, then support them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So we don't have much time, but did want to just ask you, Lindsay, how you interact with some of the other kind of place management entities in the neighborhood. So, for example, John Main Streets, we have a couple that kind of all run into each other at 7th
Right.
and Georgia,
Right.
and you in Florida area.
Yeah. So two of those main streets fall under the District Bridges umbrella. That would be Lower Georgia Avenue, as well as the Logan Circle Main Street. So we have a pretty good ecosystem that we have developed with the District Bridges multi-Main Street model. And then with Shaw Main Street, with Alex Pedro, I know is the Main Street director there. I actually knew him from my former life in Main Street, so I was happy to see that he's still working with the community. So we haven't had anything come up where where the Shaw Main Street and U Street Main Street has had to collaborate, but we are definitely open to it. We all are, working to make this community thrive and equitable for everyone. So yeah, I have a good rapport with the executive director there. So yeah.
Great. Definitely want to kind of, just note that we have invited you to the Economic Development Committee meeting in the future, and you have said yes, so thank you. We look forward to continuing the partnership with you in that space, and I know there's going to be a lot of robust conversation there. So thanks so much for joining us, and I'll turn
One other note, Commissioner Handerhan, I'm sorry. We have in the past included a little section for main streets in our economic development portion during our monthly commission meeting. So if you have time, we would still love to have you at our meetings to give any updates.
Okay,
that you
I
may
would
have.
love to. Yeah, sure, I'd love to.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Back to you, Chair Harris.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us this evening. This is our June commission meeting. That was our info session for those of you who are just joining us now. But I will call the official meeting to order at 7 p.m. Mr. Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Handrahan,
Present.
Commissioner Holohan,
Present.
Commissioner Sycamore,
Here.
Commissioner Lakatos,
Present.
Commissioner Kensick,
Present.
Commissioner Fields, Commissioner Harris,
Present.
and Commissioner Jones, present. Madam Chair, with 7 out of 8 commissioners present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioners, you have an agenda before you and a consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda and the consent agenda?
Yes, I move to approve the agenda and the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. I don't believe there are any financial reports. Commissioner Lakatos, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So first, and Commissioner Fields is not with us tonight, although there are the previous public safety and community engagement meeting minutes below. If you have trouble accessing our agenda, Cedric, if you can go ahead and drop the link into the chat, just so folks have it. I know we were a bit delayed in getting that up on the website, but we do have Lieutenant Monahan from MPD joining us this evening. So I will let her take it away. And community members, if you have questions for the lieutenant, please add them into the Q&A, or if you would like to ask the question live, please raise your little hand. Commissioners, if you can do the same, if you have questions for the lieutenant, please also raise your hand. But we'll let you take it away for a brief kind of introduction and any updates you have for us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. My name is Lieutenant Kathleen Monahan. I started off in the 3rd District as an officer in 2005. I was there through 2013, mostly as a bike patrol officer up in Columbia Heights and Petworth. I was promoted to sergeant, and then I went over to the 5th District, which is where I've been for the last 8 years, and then came back to the 3rd District as a lieutenant September of last year. They just recently assigned me to PSA 305 starting beginning of May. So that's where I am now. For those of you that aren't familiar with the PSA boundaries, that's basically going to be 14th Street to the west, Georgia Avenue and 7th Street to the east, S Street to the south, and Florida Avenue, Berry Place to the north. Like I said, I've only been in 305 for about a month. I like to say that my PSA is tiny but mighty. A lot of businesses, a lot of activity going on with it, especially with the U Street nightlife area. So with that being said, I also wanted to make sure you guys are familiar with our nightlife task force that we have in place. This started last summer, mostly as a result of the ATV riders that were kind of coming through U Street, a lot of the robberies that were going on. We kind of recognized that we needed to bring in additional resources and help from other agencies. So essentially the Nightlife Task Force is comprised of MPD, DDOT, DPW, CSOSA, and I believe the fire marshals, DCRA, or whatever the new acronym they are going under, and ABRA. And every Friday and Saturday evening, there is a meeting over at the Reeves Center where we kind of all get together to lay out our game plan for the weekend. And they deploy a whole bunch of traffic control officers. Tow cranes are out there towing cars. We have nightlife officers that are dedicated just to essentially the U Street area for crime, as a crime deterrent. CSOSA's out there with us, just kind of helping out and following up on repeat offenders. Anything and everything that we can kind of throw at to kind of keep U Street a safe environment for those that are coming in to partake of the nightlife is kind of what we're focused on. It has had a positive effect, I think, overall. Of course, I'm sure as you have seen, crime is up all over the district. And unfortunately, that does include our PSA as well. I'm kind of looking at our numbers, and so far this year, violent crime is up 24% compared to last year, and property crime is up 43% compared to this time last year. We are in a place where we are trying to do more with less. I'm sure you're also very much aware that we are having staffing issues. So we are trying to deploy our resources as efficiently as possible. Definitely trying to get as many officers out deployed on the streets as we can. I don't want to get into like very specific dry numbers very much. I'm much better with simply kind of soliciting what you might be interested in hearing about. So with that being said, I kind of want to turn it over. If anybody has any questions or specific comments or concerns, since I'm kind of new and getting introduced to this area, kind of seeing where you feel things are at, what we can do better as a department. Let's see.
Commissioner Kinsick.
Yes, thank you for being here. What have you noticed an increase in particular with guns and the areas in terms of the SMDs through 1A, 1B? Do you have any of those type of, anything you can offer with that? I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, so guns are probably my biggest concern right now. What I am personally seeing when I'm out on the streets is everybody is carrying nowadays. There are a lot more concealed carry permits, and there are a lot more people out there that are carrying without permits, a lot of illegal firearms. We're also seeing a lot of issues with people coming into the U Street area with guns, leaving them in their vehicles, which are then getting broken into, and they're stealing those guns. It is a huge concern. We have our crime suppression team, which is basically trying to focus on these issues. Honestly, I feel like sometimes I feel like we're drowning in guns out there. And I'm not really sure how we can kind of work to stem the tide, both legal and illegal firearms. So.
Commissioner Sycamore.
Hello, Lieutenant. Thank you so much for joining us. And I really appreciate you acknowledging the numbers and the increase in crime, because there's a lot of people out there that are denying that. So I really appreciate it coming straight from the horse's mouth. The question that I have is with the retirement of Chief Conti, how do you see that impacting your work, and specifically the work within your area?
So right now, there's not too much of an impact. And I guess now Chief Benedict, who has kind of stepped into the role temporarily, has made it clear to us that he's kind of here to keep the ship on an even keel. He's not looking to change up anything right now. So in terms of day-to-day operations, not much has really changed. I think when we do get a more permanent chief in place, it'll be interesting to kind of see how that plays out. I think it's going to be, if we get an outside person into the chief role, I think that's really going to shake things up. And even if we get an internal person to fill it, it's always good to have someone that'll come in, I think, with kind of fresh ideas. I really liked working with Chief Conti. I think he did an excellent job. I'm definitely going to miss him. But I'm also looking forward to see whoever steps into that role to kind of see what they can bring to the table.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Lakatos.
Hi, Lieutenant. Thank you for joining us. I know that I was wondering if you might have any sort of update or information about the murder of Calvin Gray in the 1300 block of V Street. I know it gets passed off to like another division, but if there's any more information you might have.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have any kind of an update. Once homicide takes over a scene like that, they're pretty closed mouthed about it until the case is actually closed. I was actually working that night when Mr. Gray was shot. I said the very preliminary information is that this was probably not a random attack, that this may have been targeted. But as far as any kind of update in the investigation since then, unfortunately, I don't really have anything.
Thank you.
I think along that line, and totally understand if your answer is that you don't have an update because there was another homicide. So I was wondering if you had any updates on a homicide it was on 14th Street. Sorry, I'm like, this was 2 months ago in March. I'm assuming you don't have an update.
Do you know where on 14th Street?
Sorry, I don't know why I'm forgetting. It's a 2000 block.
I definitely don't have an update. I would have to go back and look because I'm not even recalling, and it sounds horrible, which homicide that was. But yeah, I wouldn't. Generally for homicides, we don't really have too much information that we can share just because homicide is very guarded with their investigations.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there have been a few, unfortunately. So any updates, I think, would be much appreciated. I think another question, and I don't know if you have any information on this, but I noticed just outside today at Busboys and Poets, kind of on an upper window, there seemed to be, and I'm not an expert, but there seemed to be bullet holes in the window. Did that occur last night or I didn't hear anything, and I live.
I was the watch commander for last night and there were no gunshots that went off. So it wouldn't be something that happened recently. I get updates whenever there is any kind of an unlawful discharge, a shooting or anything like that. And I can say definitely within the last couple of days, they're not in that area. The last one that we had is going to be in the 400 block of N Street Northwest, which I don't think covers it here.
If that's something you can look into, I will. This just came up kind of an hour ago that I saw it. So I don't know how recent it is. And I'm hoping, because I haven't heard anything, that everything is okay. But I will flag it. I will also reach out to Andy there.
Chair, I believe that was from a few months ago.
No, they would have fixed the window. It's pretty open.
Okay, then.
I also live above Busboys. Another question. So you mentioned ATVs, and the previous person in charge of the ATV kind of task force was Lieutenant Shane Lamond. Are there any plans to ensure that there's no racist hate or biases involved in the task force and the work that they have in front of them?
So Lieutenant Lamont has actually not been in charge of the ATV task force for quite a while. It's been Captain Sean Rooney, and I believe he's still involved with that. I've worked with Captain Rooney in different ranks and different units, and he is an excellent leader, and he definitely very opposite from Lieutenant Lamont. His focus when he runs that unit is the safety of all the citizens of the District of Columbia, including the ATV riders themselves. We never want to do something that's not only going to endanger innocent bystanders, but we don't want to become the bad guys when we're trying to enforce the laws of the District of Columbia. So it's done with an eye more towards an investigative standpoint than that hands-on, let's try to get them off the ATV immediately. There is definitely an effort to make sure that we are not specifically targeting groups due to either racial, cultural, or other, say, demographics. Our focus is going to be whether or not they are breaking the law. And that's going to apply to anyone that is on an ATV in public space. So, like I said, I know that Lamont's reputation, and he's no longer a member of this department. He no longer has any association with any of the enforcement activities. And Captain Rooney, like I say, it's been quite a while that he's been in charge of the ATV task force, and I think he's done an excellent job so far. And in terms of the day-to-day operations, for the U Street area, we don't really work with them directly. We try to prevent the problem from happening in the first place by deploying our traffic control officers and our officers in a way that it discourages the ATV riders from even being able to get down U Street. I think there was a ride out last month, and we managed to shut down 9th Street and all the entrances into the U Street area, and they literally saw what was happening, turned around and went somewhere else to do their nonsense. So, but yeah, like I said, they remain a problem. We try to focus on just the law breaking, not who's doing the law breaking.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope, and this is my own personal stance, but seeing things from Baltimore and Maryland, I hope we can take a more rather than a punishment stance, a different practice for ATV riders.
Yeah, we definitely try to focus on more of being a deterrent, making it where they're not going to want to even participate in that activity in the first place, rather than trying to get to them after the fact. So.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any other questions, or community members? Do you have any questions? Okay, I'm hearing none. Thank you again for joining us this evening, Lieutenant. Appreciate your time. Would also appreciate any, if you're able to join us in future meetings, consider this a kind of longstanding invite. We'll make sure you always have a panelist link. But thank you, and we'll reach out via email if there are any kind of further questions about some of the incidents that have happened in 1B.
I've dropped my email address into the chat, so please feel free to use it anytime. It's usually the best way to get a hold of me. I think, as I explained to you before, I primarily work overnight, midnights. So during the day, I might not be able to respond immediately because I'm usually asleep. However, I am checking my email pretty much all hours of the day. So if you need something, please feel free to reach out. For those of you that are not able to access the chat, my email address is kathleen.monahan@dc.gov.
Thank you. And Cedric, if you'd be able to drop that into the chat, or if you'd be able to type it out, Lieutenant, if not, we can copy and paste it over just for the community to have it as well.
Yeah, Kathleen can be spelled in many ways.
Yeah, I'm going to put it out to everyone. Oh, there it is. And again, thank you very much for having me, and I will definitely be here for the next one.
Thank you. Okay, the next meeting for Public Safety and Community Engagement Committee will be announced. You'll be able to find it on anc1b.org. So stay tuned for that. Zoning, Preservation, and Development, Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no items on the agenda for ZPD. I do intend to introduce an item in new business, but that did not make it onto the agenda, and so it's not appropriate to talk about it now. The next meeting of the Zoning Preservation and Development Committee is Tuesday, June 20th. That is held online. It'll be 6:30 p.m. via the ANC 1B website, anc1b.org. Please note that that is a different date than usual. That is because usually this meeting is held the third Monday of each month. This one is on a Tuesday because of the federal and DC holiday of Juneteenth. Commissioner Kensick?
Yeah, isn't there a way we can just amend the agenda so you can bring up what you sent out of regards?
My opportunity to amend the agenda would have been before we had adopted it, and I did not take that opportunity.
And we do have a section in new business. So this is also just a note, commissioners, one, it takes a very long time to put together the agenda, and we were delayed this month. But if you need items added to the agenda, please send them in advance and not an hour before the meeting. Commissioner Jones, this is not directly at you, but
I deserve that one.
it takes a long time. Commissioner Jones, it takes a long time to put
Absolutely.
together the agenda. So that is why too, that we do have it open in new business. Although I do believe this was discussed last meeting. I think it's the same item, but that's okay. We can bring it up in new business.
That's it for me. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Lactus.
There's a community member with their hand raised. I didn't know if that had to do with this. I just wanted to flag it.
Cedric, do you happen to know, I didn't see this, Courtney Stockland, do you want to drop into the chat? Is this related to the zoning preservation and development section?
She wrote zoning.
Zoning, okay. Cedric, if you can go ahead and take Courtney Stockland off of mute. Hi there. And just so you know, too, we did previously kind of vote on this, so you will have 2 minutes to make any comments or questions that you may have.
Thank you. I have a specific and pointed question that I'm hoping Commissioner Jones can be helpful with. Previously in one of these meetings a couple sessions ago, it was said that split zoning, quote, isn't a thing, end quote. Can you just share with us what the deal is with what folks call split zoning, please? Thank you very much.
Sure. I have not dived into that in great detail. I'm aware that a commissioner on another commission has done so. I'm not prepared to talk about that at this time. I imagine this is in response to the commission's decision to support the proposed upzoning of the 1617 U Street site from MU4 to MU10. Commissioner Handerhan, would you mind speaking to that if you since you've been leading that process?
Sure. I can share what I was told about this issue as someone who's not, a zoning expert. I'm quoting from a staff member in Councilman Nadeau's office who represents this portfolio for them. Split zoning is not a recognized concept within the district's land use law. If what is meant is that a down zoning is sought for parts of the site, there is no basis in the comprehensive plan maps or policies to support doing so. He goes on to say, in fact, applying a different zone district to two parts of a site with the same future land map use or FLUM designation could actually be considered spot zoning, which is unconstitutional. So the issue I think here is that you have a big parcel of land, you want to have different zones within that plot of land. And I think that that concept of split zoning, which neighbors have brought up in a couple different instances, is not how people who understand DC zoning better than I do would phrase it. I think that there are two different parcels there, and so the idea of zoning one parcel and other parcel is one concept, but because it's all the same FLUM designation on the future land use map, I think that's a pretty key element of this particular site. I would note that I understand the concept of split zoning to be the analogous to what we passed in a resolution for this previously, which was asking the district to require setbacks so that you don't have a really tall building next to a small residential site. And so I think that getting caught up in the definition of split zoning, which is not, that term doesn't exist, but I think like the concept is a good one and an important one. And I've shared that before, and always happy to talk about it.
I think thank you for highlighting that, Commissioner Handerhan. I think the other thing to note from another commissioner in 1C, which briefly I just looked up kind of an email, is that Office of Planning recommended, and this is from another commissioner, that they do not recommend split zoning for a lot under 2 acres. And this lot is 1.8. I will also kind of reiterate what Commissioner Handerhan is saying, that I think there's a lot of attention on the split zoning versus the potential in kind of the required setbacks. So in the zoning itself, when there is a plot that is abutting, another kind of zone, there are required setbacks for that zone. And when there are changes, those setbacks are accounted for as well. So that might be something to look into because I think there is flexibility on the required setbacks versus kind of the larger conversation that split zoning, however it exists, would require. I think the other thing to note, so typically ANC 1B handles private properties for ZPD, and for economic development, those are the public parcels and the larger kind of areas. So I do want us to get through this portion. And I think economic development is next, which I think Commissioner Handerhan will kind of convey when that hearing is. So Commissioner Kinsick, if you can keep it brief so we can move forward to the next.
Yeah, you don't have to keep saying that. I got it. The just to be factual, it's 1.88 acres, so it'd be closer to the 1.9 as opposed to 1.8. It's literally about 0.0 or 10 less than the 2 acres that Commissioner Stevens, I believe it is, had found out. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Jones, is there anything else from ZPD?
That's it for ZPD. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Handerhan, Economic Development.
Good evening, everyone. We ended up not having a May meeting. We've had a pretty crazy schedule with the Reef Center and 1617 U Street, and didn't have any pressing agenda items. So we skipped June. We skipped May. We're back on for June. But I did want to send a reminder for Ms. Stuckman's question that the 1617 U Street site is going to come before the Zoning Commission, which will determine whether or not the commission will approve an upzoning from MU4 to MU10 for the site. The hearing notice has details on how to join and how to submit testimony, and they encourage everyone who wants to submit testimony in this case to sign up at least 24 hours ahead of time on the Office of Zoning's website, which is dcoz.dc.gov. And I'm going to put that in the chat right now. So there's time for everyone to get in their feedback on the site. You can support it, you cannot support this, you can support zoning, you cannot support the zoning. They're going to be focused on this specific MU4 versus MU10, which is a pretty specific question, but as folks have noted in the past, it's an important question. It's a threshold question for a site that is going to be a pretty significant redevelopment for that part of the U Street corridor. I also, and if a new business is more appropriate for this, I'm happy to do that. District, we alluded to in our info session that District Bridges is hosting an art all night on U Street on September 30th. They would like our support for amplified sound. Almost everything in this event is in Chair Harris's single member district. So on one hand, we could probably just have a letter of her, you know, from her supporting it, but I think it would be great to have the broader support from ANC 1B. I just dropped the text that I would like to approve into the chat, and I'm going to read it, and then if people want to discuss it at new business, that's fine. But I would like to motion that ANC 1B supports the permit application by District Bridges for that ANC 1B would send a letter that says they support the permit application by District Bridges for amplified sound as part of the Art All Night U Street event, which takes place on Saturday, September 30th from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. We understand this event takes place at the Reeve Center, Harrison Recreation Field, and Ben's Chili Bowl. District Bridges has successfully hosted this in prior years, and we look forward to they look forward to hosting it again in a way to build community in our U Street neighborhood.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Our next meeting is Thursday, June 15th at 6:30 via Zoom. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Next is Transportation Commissioner Lakatos.
Thank you, Chair Harris. So the Transportation Committee took up several resolutions at our last meeting. We didn't have a quorum, but we workshopped these with members of the community. The first resolution to consider is a resolution responding to WMATA's new Better Bus project. It's a network redesign. It's the first redesign they've done in several decades. And so the resolution is in the agenda packet. Provides some very specific feedback about specific parts of specific routes. I'm not going to go through all that right now, but it's available there. If you're also interested, I will drop a link for community members in the chat. WMATA is taking feedback through June 18th, I believe. So you can take a look at all the new proposed routes to bring some new service as well as modify existing service to be more frequent. And unless anyone has any questions, I'm happy to make a motion. I move that the ANC adopt the resolution on the WMATA Better Bus project.
Second.
There's a second. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Commissioners, let me go ahead and you can make the motion, but let me go ahead and call for a second just so we can have it all clear. I know we want to get through this and I appreciate everyone's timeliness. Go ahead, Commissioner Lakatos. Thank you.
Sure. So the next item on the agenda is a resolution on the Florida Avenue Bus Priority Project. I circulated this to commissioners in advance, but it's not in the agenda packet. I have it on my screen here and I'm more than happy to pull it up. But if that's all right, am I able to share my screen or do I need to be made host?
Cedric, I think if you go to the share screen button, you should be able to allow panelists to share if that hasn't already been selected.
And while we're figuring that out, I'll give some context. This resolution is only, so there's the Florida Avenue bus priority project that's going on from 1st Street Northeast to 9th Street Northwest. This is only asking DDOT if they will present bus lanes as a part of the design. It doesn't actually support any final design or any sort of specific iteration, but it's just asking that we'd like that to be evaluated. Since they're currently planning on putting bus lanes on U Street, and it seems like sort of an ideal continuation if possible. 1 second, I will pull it up. Alrighty. So the resolution is here. It notes the high capacity usage of Florida Avenue for the 90, 92, and 96. It's one of the highest ridership corridors in Ward 1. It connects areas that aren't connected directly via Metro Rail. It's a very slow corridor for bus riders. I can test this myself. And the Better Bus redesign, referring to the last resolution, is going to add around, I believe it's 2 new lines plus, I think we're in like 10 new buses an hour. So it would be a lot more capacity needed. It specifically construes this should not be construed as great weight for any final design, but just ask that it's considered. And with that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions before I make a motion.
Commissioners, are there any questions?
Sure, Commissioner Sycamore.
Actually, nope, never mind. I'm sorry. I just found my answer. Never mind. Thank you.
Cool. That being said, I'd like to move that the full ANC support this resolution requesting bus lanes be considered as part of design for the Florida Avenue bus priority project.
Commissioner Lakachis, can you go ahead and take this off the screen?
Oh, apologies. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those or discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item. So this item was brought to my attention actually a couple days ago from Commissioner Houlihan. The Mayor's Office of Nightlife and Culture is cooperating with DDOT to implement a nightlife parking pilot along Florida Avenue and U Street, along several specific blocks, as well as the 1900 block of 9th Street. This would have some sides of the street be no parking zones from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And they're asking for a resolution of ANC support. This came relatively last minute, so this is why it wasn't considered by the Transportation Committee. But based on sort of the urgency of getting this done, I worked on a resolution with Commissioner Houlihan. I don't know if he has anything else he'd like to add, but yeah. Commissioner Kenzik, do you have a question?
Yeah, no, I just want to echo the importance of this. I think that it would be silly that any commissioner would vote no on this. It has my full support. I do think that it would be a great 90-day pilot with everything that's going on in that area. So again, I'm just echoing everything you're saying, and Commissioner Houlihan, and appreciate your work on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Kenzik. And I will just echo that also. This is a pilot, so DDOT is going to be studying the effects of this on, so it's a public safety and parking focused pilot, but they're going to see what happens. And then if there's longer term changes, that would be something that they would, come back to us with a plan and an NOI. And seeing no further questions, I'd like to make
I have one. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Sycamore, go ahead.
No, you're good. Can you just remind me which blocks you said again?
Sure, great question. Let me pull up the exact blocks. So the blocks in the pilot are the 1900 block of 9th Street, the 800 block of Florida Avenue on the south side, the 1900 block of 9th Street on the west side, the 800 block of Florida Avenue. Sorry, there's a lot of numbers on the south side. Bonobos, I think that's where it is. The 1100 block of U Street, north side, Industrial Bank across from Solly's 7-Eleven, 1200 block of U Street, north side, where bench chili bullets, but this wouldn't affect any of the streeters. It wouldn't have anything to do with that. It just affects the metered paid parking that's there. And the curbside management division in their proposal included a recommendation for continuity along the corridor. So to consider doing the 900 block and the 1,000 block. And in the resolution, I echoed that support to see that we have that continuity as a part of the pilot.
Okay, so I guess the only concern that I have is just one of my residents' biggest complaints is about parking. I guess that's only my only concern, but I think that's something we could probably try to figure out. Is there anything that you know about that's possibly has been discussed about that?
Do you mean residential parking?
Yeah, because residential parking specifically, because there are still Maryland and Virginia tags and non-zoned one parking that's all over residential parking in this area.
No, and I definitely understand that concern as well. That's something I hear from my constituents as well. What I know from the Nightlife Task Force is that they're getting DPW resources that will be working late nights. And I've spoken with Director Zapari, and and I know there's a couple of what we can call like sort of late like parking hotspots in the neighborhood surrounding it. And he's asked me to kind of transmit any of those locations. So I'm happy if there's some specific blocks that you have in mind. We can kind of try and work to see if they can get DPW resources to go there late at night. Some of the challenges also is making sure that we get the resources there before it hits midnight, because sometimes at midnight in the residential zones, it clocks out of the restrictions.
Got it. Thank you so much.
No, definitely. And not hearing any other questions or concerns, I would like to make, pardon me, I would like to make a motion that the ANC adopt a resolution supporting the U Street nightlife parking pilot.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
All right, we have one last item on the agenda. So this is an NOI response resolution for NOI 2382. This is at the intersection of 10th Street Northwest, Berry Place Northwest, and Florida Avenue Northwest. For those of you who are familiar, this is right where the exit driveway for Garfield Terrace Apartments is and the Howard Service Center. It's currently a four-way, oddly diagonal spot. As a part of the Near Northwest Safety and Mobility Study 3 that DDOT did in 2021, they proposed a tactical roundabout at this location. And as they've been going and installing those, they've finally gotten to this location. They've come to us at a 60% design. I drafted this resolution specifically asking for some safety design improvements, including a request for raised crosswalks. Since it's a roundabout, they're changing it from stop signs to yield signs. But I know there's still some cars that can speed through there. There's raised crosswalks that have been put in a lot of places around the district, and I think it would be a great location to add those. I'm also requesting, the resolution already also requests, pardon me, the addition of a crosswalk on the west side. So if you're familiar, if you come from the Garfield Terrace Apartments, you can't cross directly straight down 10th Street. You have to go across Berry and then across Florida to then go down. And it's kind of just a convoluted little series of things. The final thing is that the right adjacent to this is the end of the Sherman Avenue protected bike lane. And the road width there is actually sufficiently wide that it would allow for a protected bike lane without removing any parking between that Sherman Avenue location to 11th Street, where there is currently a painted bike lane and potentially future a protected bike lane. This is on the Move DC plan. And so this would ask that DDOT evaluate if that's a possibility, that they include that in the design. I also included the roadway widths in the appendices to the resolution. So that clarifies, based off of DDOT's engineering manual, that there is space with the parking, the right of way, and for everything like that. Obviously, also, I will clarify, if they think there isn't space for this, they won't propose it and they won't design it. But this is sort of just asking they evaluate it, because it's a little bit of a disconnect there. Because you come off of Florida Avenue, it's a painted bike lane, you go into a share on 11th Street, and it gets just a little bit unsafe. happy to answer any questions. I know I just gave you a lot of information. Commissioner Kenzico.
Yeah, that area is extremely dangerous. Ironically enough, I saw Commissioner Umar the other day walking across illegally in the center of the street because he lives in Garfield and it's a very awkward setup there. In the 7 years I've noticed accidents there. My only concern about it is the yield, having a yield sign, because people aren't even stopping as it is now. I know that personally from going through there 100 times a day. And it's dangerous. There's times where there's people that are close calls between people that are trying to bike, people that are walking, even their dog in that area. So I just and also Howard owns across from that service center a parking lot. So we would have to have a lot of parties involved to make sure that the city will be able to work and negotiate something with Howard, but also that it's going to be a safer area. I'm all about safety, better biking. It's just something we have to keep in mind. A yield, right? They don't stop as right now as stop signs. I don't know how it's going to work out with the yield, but just something to think about.
Yeah, Commissioner Kansik, I totally agree. And I actually, I forgot to add that piece of context. In the resolution response, I include that we're opposed to the use of solely yield signs. So requesting the use of, raised crosswalks, which would slow the car, so like basically like a speed bump or like a speed table that functions as a crosswalk, as well as the evaluation of still including stop signs. Sometimes in like roundabouts, those aren't generally used. But in this case, this is a different kind of this isn't Logan Circle. This is a pedestrian heavy area, and there's a lot of people walking around. But I definitely agree. And the same thing I will say this is like, if DDOT thinks they can't handle the certain things with Howard and all the different lots and all the stuff like that, they won't put certain things in. But I think we're trying to aim for as safe as possible, and I definitely agree. And I think Commissioner Sycamore, you have your hand up.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Commissioner Lakatos. This is my SMD. I can literally see the intersection right now. It's a very dangerous area, and I really appreciate all of your work on that. The only one of the big concerns that I have, to echo Commissioner Kenzick as well, is that people don't stop already. I'm really having a hard time just kind of picturing how that's going to happen. And the second thing that I'm really concerned about is that we do have a lot of large like 18-wheelers, believe it or not, that come through that intersection, from Whole Foods to down out to get out on 14th Street. So I have a big concern about people just kind of going over the roundabout anyway and just plowing through it, no matter how well designed it is, because an 18-wheeler can't really maneuver around those types of things that well. I don't know if that's illegal. I'm not sure on the specifics of that, but it does happen. And I've seen it happen in other cities before with roundabouts, and they just plow right over it. So another thing that I really am in support of this is putting a crosswalk from Garfield Terrace. It's really very important to have one there, especially with seniors. So thank you so much for all that work. Those are just my only concerns that I have.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Sycamore, and I definitely agree. I will say about the freight issue. I think there is an issue because those trucks should not actually be driving there. They are. Same thing. They are. They're not legal. They're supposed to follow the freight routes. But I think that it would be a worthy addition, and I will yield to Commissioner Jones to ask a procedural question about how to do it, to request a further be resolved that DDOT hardens the roundabout, because I can very much see that an 18-wheeler, someone in a souped up Dodge Charger at 1 a.m. runs right through the roundabout over the flex posts and kind of just makes it useless. And I think having a little bit of concrete might be helpful.
There's no parliamentary procedure. You can just simply add it and say in the motion that you're adding that text, but this is simply a draft. And so there's nothing that you need to specifically add. You can say it in the motion that you would like to add that verbiage that wasn't included in the draft.
I appreciate that, Chair. Oh, sorry, I didn't cut you off.
One note, I would encourage commissioners, I think it's important to raise concerns with kind of the resolutions, but I think it's not particularly a good argument to say, we shouldn't have something there because no one's going to follow it anyway. that leads to maybe we add verbiage around enforcement or something to that degree. But just because no one's going to follow it doesn't mean we shouldn't try the different solutions there. So I think with your, context around saying, we're not simply, we wouldn't want DDOT just to add yield signs or just signage, like there needs to be more extensive solutions, I think is important. But I would strongly encourage commissioners to not necessarily push down a resolution because it's not going to work when we need to try something, or we need to add in our thoughts for something, especially at a dangerous intersection. Are there any other commissioner comments? I do see one community comment from Mr. Patrick Nelson.
I still have my hand up as well.
Your hand is not up, but go
yes,
ahead.
it is.
You can't see it. It's
Oh.
Commissioner Chair Harris. It's the color in the background.
There we go. So just in a quick response to that, that's actually the sentiments echoed by my constituents here on this block and over on 10th Street. So I do appreciate the schooling, but I'm also here to represent my constituents. So I appreciate you bringing that up, but it is a concern. So thank you so much, Chair.
Yeah, Chair, I'm going to add to that too. We all are adults, and I said that for the record, because this is a public hearing, we're being recorded, that it just is a concern of mine. It's not to say, but I'm not into having, I said I would like a safer area. I think that's great. It's a dangerous area. Again, I'll second Commissioner Sycamore with the schooling, but got it under.
Okay, Cedric, if you can take Mr. Nelson off of mute. Patrick.
Good evening, folks. I just want to let you know as a commission that ANC 1E, at its last meeting that I attended and addressed the same issue, has also passed a resolution supporting 1B's resolution to DDOT, just so you guys know.
Thank you, Patrick. I did know. I spoke to Commissioner Jacobson, who drafted that resolution, and we kind of worked on some of those safety issues together. I'm glad we can do some cross ANC collaboration on the borders. Barring any other questions, I'd like to make a motion that the full ANC adopt the resolution as drafted with an additional resolve requesting the tactical turnstile include some sort of hardening measures to prevent dangerous driving.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will add that the Transportation Committee is seeking new members. So if you're interested in joining, you can email me at 1b04@anc.dc.gov. Our next meeting is next Wednesday, June 7th at 7 p.m. And you can register on the ANC1b.org website. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I would encourage the commissioners who have raised kind of the concerns to ensure that their constituents' voices are also heard at the committee meetings and encourage them to join there. Next is alcohol beverage regulation. Commissioner Holohan.
Yeah. First, Commissioner Lakatos, thanks for taking on such a difficult committee, and I'm glad I don't have to do that. We didn't meet last month, but we only have two things to discuss this month. First one up is a settlement agreement that Commissioner Lakatos has been working on for the past few months. Do you have anything you'd like to discuss about that before we vote on it?
I will just add that this settlement agreement with Maidan was the result of a lot of extensive community involvement and negotiations, and I'm very happy that it's finally finished and happy that both the neighbors and the establishment are able to hopefully enter a new era of happy relations.
Thanks for that. Great. So it's a settlement agreement for Maidan located at 1346 Florida Avenue Northwest. ABRA number 106450. I'd like to make a motion to approve the full ANC, approve the settlement agreement with ANC 1B and Maydon.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. And Commissioner Lakatos, thank you so much for working on the settlement agreement. I know it was hard and very long. I think though, with kind of, you worked with the community members on this and kind of the establishment itself. So really appreciate everything you've done. And I think this is a good settlement agreement for other establishments to use.
Just second those comments. I think we've worked on, I don't know how many settlement agreements over the course of the past 6 months, and this one might be, this and Flash with Commissioner Hanrahan might be the two most difficult settlement agreements that have been ongoing. So thanks to you both. I know how difficult these processes can be. Only other thing I've got is the return of the letter on racial equity involving settlement agreements. Last month we met, we didn't have a letter. I did send that to you all, I think last week, just to sort of get it in front of you. This is really just a simple letter asking about the ability for ANC committees to have the ability to ask for racial equity training when there has been documented cases of racial discrimination or violations. This sprang from a lot of discussion in the ABR committee, different members of the community raising concerns and noting the fact that the ANC committees do not have the ability to require restaurants to undergo some kind of racial equity training in their settlement agreements. This is just a simple ask for that ability. This was a compromise between members of the ABR committee and others, and we thought this was sort of in a good place to allow us to potentially make liquor license holders better partners in the community.
Sorry, we need to go back quickly just for a second. I'm so sorry, Commissioner Hollihan. Patrick, do you have anything else to add? I see your hand is still up, or was that just from the prior comment?
Sorry, I'll take it down.
Just wanted to check. Thank you. Sorry about that. And one thing to add, and I don't know if you would be open to this, Commissioner Hollihan, but I think we may want to add in the words DEI and bias kind of prevention training. I don't know, and from my time working on kind of those solutions outside of ANC work, I don't know if I know, and I could be wrong, if there are any specific racial equity trainings, but there are on the stance of preventing kind of discrimination and bias and kind of helping to instill diversity and equity and inclusion. So maybe we just want to add those words in too, just to make it more distinct and provide, I guess, a little bit more options if ABCA were to take this on and say, you know, oh yeah, this is a good thing we should add to settlement agreements.
Yeah, you've got the professional experience here in that realm, so happy to take that advice.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Commissioner Sycamore.
Hey, Commissioner Houlihan, this is great. Thank you so much. Just quick question of clarity. So this is only if someone has been found in violation of some sort of racially biased practices while in business. So this is a renewal of liquor licensing. Is that correct? Not a requirement for getting a license. Is that correct?
Well, it's during the process when a liquor license holder is seeking a renewal, or if someone is seeking a new license, when they go through the process, the placard has been placed, we discuss it in the ABR committee. if someone has been, credibly accused of some kind of racial bias or discrimination, or if there's been violations. This really came from the discussion around Nelly's from a few years ago. One of our members in the ABR committee, Karen Gall, was asking about the ability for us to demand racial equity or DEI trainings. We did not have that power to demand Nelly's to do so. We did get a letter to the community saying that they would continue to train all of their employees in this kind of racial equity or DEI trainings. After that, Karen had asked potentially about a resolution coming from ANC 1B asking for every single liquor license holder in the district to undergo training. I thought that after talking to her over a couple of different times, we thought that this might be a good compromise to ask for liquor license holders who have been deemed to be problematic or some kind of history of racial bias, that they undergo these types of trainings.
And so a quick follow-up on that. So if someone is applying for a new license, how would we know if they have some sort of history or record of that?
We wouldn't, just if they've previously owned another restaurant. Their violations follow them as they go. We have a new liquor license establishment that's opening up just around the corner from me, and their violation history, which they don't have one, is following them over from H Street. So, it's more of just to keep our options open, so we don't tie ourselves down. APCA could come back and say absolutely not, but this is more of just to not put ourselves into a corner.
So it doesn't cross state lines or any other jurisdictions. It's within the district.
Yes.
Are there any other questions? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make the motion to have ANC 1B send a letter asking APCA about the availability for us to require liquor license holders to undergo racial equity or DEI trainings.
Do we have a second?
I want to second it very loudly. Yes.
Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Next meeting is Wednesday, June 21st, 7 p.m. via Zoom.
Thank you. And thank you for your work on that letter. I think it is a really important and sensitive topic. So I am glad that we are sending something to APCA to help to try to be a little bit more proactive on these cases. So something like Nelly's, the incident in Nelly's doesn't come up again. Okay, administrative. So ANC 1B, we do have a vacancy for 1B06. Commissioner Johnson resigned. I believe he is moving on to bigger and hopefully better things. Not in DC. So that is why we have a vacancy. If there are any community members who are interested and have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any commissioners. You can also reach out to the Office of Advisory Neighborhood Commissions as well. This will be posted. I believe it's already been posted on the registrar. So all of the information should be there. We can also share that info if you do not have it. If you know of anyone who lives in 1B06, which is kind of where Malcolm X Meridian Hill Park is, please let them know. And we are all happy to kind of answer any questions that they might have. We are starting our 6th month, some of us 2.6 months into kind of this new term. So we would love to have you join us. This is also to note, commissioners or constituents who have questions who live in 1B06, please, if you have any concerns, please reach out to 1b@anc.dc.gov, and we will make sure to field that to a nearby commissioner to help kind of resolve that issue. So don't feel like because you don't have anyone representing your area right now that no one will hear you out or hear your concerns. We're still here. We just need to make sure someone can kind of tag in for a little bit, depending on the topic area. Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, just real quick, that area, a lot of it was the old 1B05, including Malcolm X Park and Euclid and a couple other streets. And I've already started getting some requests from people that worked with me last summer in regards to Malcolm X, Meridian Hill. One of them is Return to Citizens Day. So I have no problem at all if I can help assist with anything in terms of gathering for Meridian or Malcolm X Park, or answering or speeding any of the questions. By all means, 1B05, I'm here to help. Like all of us are, but I'm letting it out there. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Kinsick. I appreciate it. We'll be sure to drop your email and then the office email as well too into kind of the chat on that. I am looking through the agenda right now and I saw him join briefly, but I do not see him on any longer. I'm not sure. Apologies. We're moving on to our executive council member, commissioner, and community announcements. We normally have a spot for Mr. Gerard Allen. And I saw him very briefly on, but I do not see him on any longer. But if he hears me, if he's tuning in, you can go next after office of the council member. We do have someone new joining us this evening.
Hi, Chair Harris. Hi, commissioners and community members. My name is Nicole Rivero. For those I haven't met yet, I'm Councilmember Nadeau's Chief of Staff. I've been with the office a few months now, and I will be attending these meetings going forward. Lauren Lipsey is still with our office doing constituent services for 1B, so please feel free to reach out to her. Continue to reach out to her for any constituent services requests, but just mixing up kind of how we're covering community meetings in the office. So you'll see my face here every month going forward. So the big thing at the council that we're all following very closely is, of course, budget. So I will be brief tonight, but wanted to share a few budget items relevant to 1B. So on Tuesday, the council debated and held its final vote on the Local Budget Act for FY24. We have a little more work to do on the Budget Support Act, which will have its final vote on June 13th. So tune into that. And then a few items I think of note for this area. On performance parking, we were able to fund $250,000 to implement a performance parking zone program in the U Street area. It'll implement demand pricing, and the increased revenue will be going to a dedicated fund for public safety, business, and nightlife management initiatives in that area. Similar zones already exist around Nats Park and Capital One Arena, so we do have some existing programs to kind of look to for how they've worked in other areas of the city. And this allocation supports the startup costs of the new zone. And we will follow it up with legislation and planning to establish the zone itself, including the boundaries and the uses of this ongoing revenue source. So more to come on that as we codify it into legislation. We also added $50,000 to the DCPL budget to fund a study and community engagement to identify public facility needs for the area between Adams Morgan and DuPont Circle. This is timed to inform the planned redevelopment of public lands at 1617 U Street. The council member has voiced support for a library in that area, so just looking to gather more information and engage with the community further on if that is the direction for that location. Roosevelt Stay funding. The budget adds $3 million to support childcare at the Roosevelt State program at Garnett Patterson, which is going to allow our parent scholars to have their children on site. This has been a really high priority for the council members, so we're excited to get that done. The budget also includes nearly $1 million for violence interruption in Ward 1, but in particular for 1B, this includes funding for new floating violence interrupters to specifically focus on the 14th and V area. So There's a lot in the budget. We're trying to put out some constant updates. We'll put out our next newsletter in the next day, I believe, with some additional detail. So keep an eye out for that, and don't hesitate to contact our office if anyone has any specific questions about anything in the budget, if we can assist with anything else. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, commissioners. If you have any questions, please raise your hands. I see them. Apologies, Commissioner Sycamore. I now can see your hand. But Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, real quick, who's going to be overseeing this dedicated fund where these extra monies are going to be going into?
That is a good question. I don't want to give you the incorrect info, so let me follow up with you on that.
Apologies. There's my fiance is feeding our dog and got kind of loud. So, Commissioner Sycamore.
Hello, thank you, and welcome to the Lion's Den. Just quick question on violence interrupters. What about policing, and where's the council members stand on that? I haven't had a chance yet to look at the numbers from the final number that's been, I believe it's been passed already. I've been out for a while, so I haven't been able to look at that. Can you give me a little bit more information on that with violence interrupters in comparison to police funding?
Sure. I don't have the police funding numbers right in front of me at this second, but I'm happy to pull all of that info and share that back with you.
Are there any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Lakatos.
I just wanted, hi, Nicole, it's good to see you again. Saw the opening of the Atlantis. I kind of just wanted to reiterate my support for the Ward 1 Green Streets that the council member helped get included in the budget, and especially for the potential use of that on the 2100 block of 9th Street on the west side, where there's some serious safety issues for pedestrians. Just getting, as we know, more pedestrian traffic now. We have a great new nightlife venue there. I think that'd be really helpful. Putting in my plug, and I'll keep mentioning it, but
Thanks, Commissioner. And after I saw you the other day, I did bring that back to the team. So thank you for continuing to advocate for that area.
Commissioner Hanahan.
Cool, congrats on the new job. And it's been great to correspond with you via email. I just wanted to reiterate what I know you're tracking or I know the council member is tracking, and therefore I assume you're tracking around the 600 block of P Street, which is in Mr. Holland's district. We had a productive task force meeting today, but something that was brought up that I think is relevant around the behavioral health supports is that a lot of when you have an area that has had such kind of historic patterns of drug sales and use, it's a little bit of like a whack-a-mole situation. So something we're seeing in LaDroit is some of the like spillover drug dealing that has maybe been disrupted around the 600 block of T. And now we're seeing it at Bower and U Street by the U Street Alley. So, this was flagged for MPD, but just on your radar as you continue to advocate for the behavioral health interventions and kind of a smart combination of that with MPD and other things. I just wanted to make sure that was top of your mind. Thank you.
Yeah, and we were able to secure dedicated funding for that area and behavioral health outreach and some other things that the community has flagged as kind of an essential intervention program for that area. It's, very top of mind for the council member and the whole team. I know we participate in the task force meetings. So we are very well aware of the issues in that area and are working diligently on it. And funding is a big part of that. So we were happy to see that dedicated funding.
Thank you so much. And Lauren Lipsky has been the rep for the task force. I just want to say she's been like the best constituent service kind of PSC I've worked with as an ANC. So credit to her and
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Sycamore.
Hi, just one more quick thing. So now that we've brought up T Street, is there any way that we can maybe ask the council member and maybe I guess it's DPW on possibly maybe doing some sort of cleanup in that alley that's right there, like just a general spray down, because there is quite a lot of human waste there, and the smell can impact a lot of our businesses. Specifically, I'm thinking of the faux restaurant that's right there, and some of the businesses across the street. Is there any way we can maybe address that?
Yeah, sure. Let me flag that for our constituent services team, and they can follow up with DPW. So we'll see what we can do. Thanks.
Cedric, if you can go ahead and take Courtney Stockland off of mute. And while he does that, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us. Welcome. Not a lion's den, but so thank you. We are excited to have you. I will also want to reiterate, and I said this to the council member last month, but really do appreciate the funding for violence interrupters at 14th and B. I think you heard on the call earlier with MPD that there have been multiple homicides on this block that have not stemmed from nightlife, that have stemmed from the neighborhood issues. So really appreciate that. One question I have, is this funding for the once office, or is it for kind of Cure the Streets? I'm assuming for the once office because it's the floating interrupters.
I believe so, but let me double check and I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for taking up a little bit of time, but Courtney, if you want to go ahead and take yourself off of mute, you can.
Thanks, Nicole, for being with us. You were with us during the lieutenant's time. Is that what I just heard?
I was, yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you. You heard her explain how they're, feel like they're just drowning in guns, both legal and illegal. Wanted to hear if there's any funding and effort to focus on that issue. And also, if you could please speak a little bit more about what peacekeepers are, who they are, where they come from, what the measurement of success is, and just a little bit more about that program and what they look like on the street. I'm not sure if I've ever actually seen one. Thank you very much.
Sure. So the violence interrupters, you probably wouldn't know it if you saw them on the street. They're folks from the community who are kind of trusted messengers in the community. And they really try to intervene before especially gun violence occurs. So they're kind of monitoring what's going on with kind of the neighborhood crews. That's why they're particularly effective where there is place-based violence. So it's not a solution for violence everywhere. It's really a solution for, as Chair Harris referenced, sort of the neighborhood-centric issues that we're seeing in certain areas of the city and of the ward. And so, they're monitoring kind of what they're hearing, what's going on social media. They're out in the community talking to folks. And what they try to do is convince that person that there's another choice to not pick up a gun. They, kind of intervene and have conversations to prevent it from occurring to begin with. On the question of kind of how is success measured, so there are two programs. One is run by the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. The other is run through the Attorney General's office. That's Cure the Streets. The Attorney General's office does have a kind of a results page on their website. I'm happy to find it real quick and put it in the chat. And it does have metrics measuring kind of how many interventions they've been able to do, how many engagements they've had, how many people are participating in their programs, how many folks they're kind of engaged with. Ward 1 is one of the newest areas for the Cure the Streets program. So we only have data for, I think, the last 6 months or so versus some of the older ones in other areas of the city that you can also kind of compare with to see the longer term programs and how they've had success. I believe there's also a metrics page for the mayor's program, but I'll double check on that. So I would encourage folks to kind of take a look and understand that. In terms of the funding for illegal guns, I mean, in Ward 1, we've kind of talked about it a little bit. The way that the nightlife task force in the U Street area in particular is trying to address this is partially through the towing of cars that are being used as kind of gun lockers. People are getting into arguments kind of in the in the bars and clubs coming out, getting their gun. And so that's one way, just in the U Street area in particular, we're looking to address it. In terms of kind of particular line item funding to address the proliferation of illegal guns, I'd have to check in on that to get you some real specifics. I'm happy to bring that to next month's meeting, or you can reach out to me if you want to share your contact info. I'm happy to kind of follow up with you on that. Was that helpful? Did that answer your question?
Thank you. Very helpful. Tell us more about the gun locker situation for cars, and how do they know which cars to tow?
Sure. So, we're not towing cars just because we think they might have illegal guns. It's just enforcing the parking restrictions in the U Street area that already exist.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe, so we did find some of that data that you are referencing, Nicole. So Cedric will be posting those links for everyone to see. But Commissioner Holohan, I believe your hand is up.
Sure, couldn't help but add a few more words here. For those who don't know me, I work for Giffords, the gun violence prevention organization founded by former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. Community violence intervention is one of those things that we ask every single state to work on. It hasn't been politicized, but there are many who see funding for CVI as a sort of as an attack on funding of police. This is actually supposed to be in addition to. CVI workers or violence interruption workers are people who work on the micro level. We're talking block to block, people who are trusted by people in their community, people who do not trust police. One of the major problems that we have with closure rates in this country is that people don't feel comfortable coming forward to police and providing an eyewitness account. If you don't have an eyewitness account, it gets a lot harder for police to close their cases. And so what violence interrupters do is try to prevent the cycle of violence. This is also something that we're working with hospitals on. We have hospital-based violence interruption. And so we're just seeing that if there is, in some communities, for instance, in the Bronx, I think there was like a 26 to 36% reduction in violent crime over the course of a year when there is sustained funding. The problem is that there hasn't been sustained funding in a lot of these communities over the course of the last several years. However, that's something that the Biden White House is trying to correct. They had about $1 billion in CVI funding going towards states, trying to provide incentives to states to dip into this money and start spending it on these programs, but they're relatively new. So the data that we have on them is inconclusive, but in places like New York, in Chicago, former Education Secretary Arnie Duncan started one of his own CVI organizations based in Chicago. Where there is sustained funding, we do see a reduction in violence. But however, this is not supposed to be something that takes money away from police. It's something that is supposed to be in addition to and an answer to gun violence that we're seeing in cities across this country. Just wanted to add my professional 2 cents.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Holohan. Commissioner Sycamore, if you can keep it brief.
Thank you, Commissioner Houlihan and Ms. Rivero. Sorry, there we go. Commissioner Houlihan and Ms. Riviero, thank you so much for everything. Just a quick question. Do violence interrupters have to identify themselves when intervening in some sort of conflict? The only reason why I'm asking is because I'm thinking about people who feel like that they're snitches, or people, they could possibly be put on a list of snitches, right? And I grew up in New York. This is kind of like what we had. So I'm a little concerned about some of the safety. So is there some sort of requirement to disclose who they are when they do find this?
So I'm not sure about a requirement to disclose, but I think a big piece of the violence interrupter program that we get asked is like, how do you work with MPD? The question is, they really don't. VIs are not informants. They are not there to then report back to the police. So a big piece of how they work in community is to build that trust, that, if someone says to a VI that something's going on in the neighborhood, they might be involved, that information is not then getting reported to the police. I think it's, partially for their safety as well. They're in these communities, they live in the community. So that's, I think, a big distinction is that this is violence prevention. This is not, and then if a violent event does occur, that is when MPD comes in. So them not being seen as snitches in the community is a big piece of how they build trust and get folks to work with them.
Yeah.
So are they some sort of mandated reporters? Like they do see like any sort of, violence toward children or anything like that? Is there anything like that?
I don't believe so. I'm happy to follow up on that.
Not unless required in their grant program, but I don't believe that's something that exists in many CVI grant program and organizations across the country. As Nicole said, these relationships are built on trust. Many of these people are people who've been involved in violent crime in their own past. They're have been out of prison. Many of these people are religious figures. They're people who have started up youth programs in their neighborhoods. So when these people do become violence interrupters, they are well known in their community as violence interrupters. They know that there's someone who is sort of like a figure of peace who is trying to get people to stop fighting. They're not breaking up fights themselves. They don't try to put themselves in harm's way. And unfortunately, all too often we do lose violence interrupters to gun violence quite often. But these people are not, as you said, they're not seen as snitches. They're not going to see something or see a drug deal or someone buy a gun and then go tell police, because they would essentially be burned as a trusted figure in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole. Are there any other commissioner questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Well, excited to have you join us every month. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, let's see. I'm trying to look to see if Mr. Gerard Allen is still with us, but I don't think he is. Moving on to commissioner announcements. Commissioner Lactos.
Yes, I have two announcements. I believe Gerard would have probably been one of the people to announce this, but this Saturday from 12 to 7 at Meridian Hill Malcolm X Park, the Afro-Latino Festival, the second year. It's being hosted. It was a great time last year. I definitely recommend community members to go out. I'm going to put the link in the chat. It's hosted by the Mayor's Office of Latino Affairs. And the second event, also relevant, same Saturday, lots of events, you can do two in one day. The annual Truck Touch. So for those of you familiar, the DC government has a lot of hardware, lots of different trucks. It's kind of a fun thing for kids. Different, like the garbage truck, the snow plows, everything like that. It's happening at RFK, and I'm gonna send that link as well. It's hosted by DPW. And those are my announcements.
Thank you. I think both events are very fun. Commissioner Handerhan.
Similarly, just want to share an event that's coming up. Actually, tomorrow, it's going to be the first of a monthly series called First Fridays Art Walk. So this is happening June 2nd from 6 p.m. tomorrow, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. on the 600 block of T Street in front of the Howard Theater. It's designed to celebrate and showcase the local artistic and business community talent. All ages are welcome, and there's going to be local art, music, food, and drink. So I will send all I have is like a tweet on it, but I will put that in the chat.
Thank you. Commissioner Sycamore.
Just real quick, first of all, happy Pride Month, everyone. Yay. It's great to see that the Wilson building has a pride flag in front of it finally, which is great. And just one quick announcement for me personally. I'm sorry if I haven't gotten to your emails. If anyone in the public is waiting for my response, I just got back from some time away, and I wasn't able to respond. So I will be responding as quickly as humanly possible, probably over this weekend. Thank you so much.
I have one announcement. So the 14th and U Farmers Market is reopening this Saturday, rain or shine, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Robin, the owner of the market, sent across the news today. So I know that there are some community members, or a lot of community members, who were sitting on the edge of their seats waiting for this opening. I certainly was. So maybe I'll see some of y'all out there this Saturday. Are there any other commissioner announcements? Okay, community announcements. Community members, if you have any announcements, please raise your hand, and we can take you off of mute. If not, if you don't want to say it live, you can also add it into the Q&A and we can read it out. I will give folks nope, sorry, thought I saw a hand. Okay, I am not seeing any hands or seeing anything in the Q&A. Apologies, 1 second. Now moving on to new business. Commissioner Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to introduce in new business a resolution in support of naming the alley located at 1021 through 1027 Euclid Street Northwest in memory and honor of Alma Thomas. With the chair's permission, I will share my screen.
Go ahead. Sorry, there's sirens going past.
Yep. My screen should be shared now. And I believe that, so as a little bit of background, I think I mentioned this at our previous meeting. The reason why I'm putting forward this resolution is to enable the creation of more housing where none currently exists within the single member district from which I'm elected. This is the alleyway between 11th Street and Sherman Avenue Northwest, and then Euclid Street and Fairmont Street Northwest. I believe that one or more members of the party that is requesting this alley naming are present. If it pleases the chair, I'd like to give them a few minutes to speak.
Sure. If you were here, kind of present, please go ahead and raise your hands, and then Cedric will take you off of mute. I believe I'm seeing Meredith and Commissioner Jones, if you can go ahead and maybe take this off the screen.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm not sure if folks had a chance to read it all, but I think
I will make sure we get a chance before I ask folks to vote on it.
Okay. Meredith Moldenhauer, I apologize if I am not pronouncing your last name correctly, but if you can go ahead and take yourself off of mute. Commissioner Jones.
Cedric, would you also please permit Amy to speak? She is part of the same party.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll try to do it one by one just to make sure that we don't have any kind of interruptions. I know it's a little hard on Zoom.
Absolutely.
But, sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you so much, Chairperson and Commissioner Jones. Meredith Moldenhauer from Cozen O'Connor on behalf of Amy Levin here for Girl Punch. We are looking to seek to name the alleys indicated behind 1021 to 1027 Euclid Street Northwest, Alma Thomas Court. This is a network of alley properties. My client is looking to develop one group of them. And they would obviously be providing single family homes. We did present to the ANC 1B's Transportation Committee on April 11th. At that time, we presented and kind of discussed and threw out 6 different potential names. I'm happy to kind of walk through those. Those were just different names of different individuals that we believe may rise to the level of, being honored. We then focused in on Alma Thomas Court. We are aware that there is the Alma Thomas House that is a private home and would not violate the DC rules for having 2 properties named after the same person. Miss Thomas is an African-American abstract artist, most known for her mosaic-like paintings. The first person to graduate from Howard University Department of Art in 1924. Taught art at Shaw Junior High School in DC here for 35 years, and is the first African-American to have a solo exhibit at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York City. Became an important role model for women, African Americans, and artists alike. And so we are seeking support for the alley naming process. We will also most likely be back for zoning relief, and we'll be excited to kind of talk about the project in more detail at that time. And so this is not the only opportunity that we will have to speak with you commissioners and the public. And I'll let Amy just maybe speak briefly about any communications she's had. Thank you.
Hey, can you guys hear me? I couldn't tell if I was taken off mute. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think Meredith summed it up. I just wanted to thank you all for your time this evening, and just to say that we had gone round and round about the names for the alley, and with a lot of input from neighbors and folks around the way, we settled in on Alma Thomas. So we hope to garner your support for her. What a wonderful woman, and the work that she's done in the area. How apropos to be able to honor her. So like Meredith said, we're happy to discuss the project at a later time when we discuss that more in depth. Happy to be here to answer any questions that you guys have. But just looking as a woman-owned business to honor a lovely woman artist in this area, that we can attend to that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Kinsick.
Yeah, I'm going to be voting yes on this, but a question I have is, when you were speaking to other neighbors, did you have any pushback at all with anybody?
No, I didn't actually. They 2 people actually suggested her in the original list, and we just didn't we didn't coordinate the list prior to the previous meeting. So I was really happy that that was sort of like where we landed, because people seemed very excited about that. So no pushback at all. People were really happy to hear that was happening.
And Amy and or Meredith, would you please just briefly speak about the outreach that you've done so far and any continued outreach to neighbors that you might have planned?
Meredith, I'll take this. So, I mean, I think Meredith should probably speak to the stuff related to, I think there were some flyers that were supposed to go out for a previous meeting, but somebody was out of town and that didn't happen. So my experience related to that is just very, sort of anecdotal with people, because I spend time over there and stay at that property, quite frequently. So probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 folks who are just adjacent to the property there have just expressed, support, and they're just happy to have the alley being cleaned up and named, and that it's been sort of a derelict area back there with a lot of there are apparently at one point goats that were grazing in that area. So I think people are just excited that there's going to be something happening there to clean that up, and they want to support that. So that's kind of what I was asked about. I think the only pushback was about stuff related to like digging up the alley and the normal things related to construction that we will obviously do all the things that we're supposed to do to manage that. Depending on, sort of how the project goes, that may or may not be an issue. If we're trying our best to try to run as many utilities as possible on the private side so that we avoid that as much as possible. But
And I
really
think a
those
lot of that will certainly be discussed later on. I just want to make sure that we set expectations. I know that that is typically top of mind for a lot of these zoning things, but what we are reviewing tonight is simply the naming, correct? Okay. Just to make sure we move things along, and I'm going to keep you both here since you are kind of the main points of contact. I'm seeing three community members who have their hands raised. Cedric, if you can take the person who is coming after kind of Amy, and then also Commissioner Jones, if you can go ahead and start the timer.
And Chair, there's also something in the Q&A as well, just FYI.
Thank you.
Good evening, guys. Hi, so I am one of those residents that surround the alleyway. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great.
Yes, we can.
Kind of. I'll speak loudly. Now, I do appreciate and really do respect the idea of honoring someone who has been here, to name that, but to be out, I don't think that the sole purpose of what they're doing here is they're trying to name the street to develop an area to make money on an investment that is this alley. But the issue is that this alley is also where I park, and I know others park that don't have direct access to the front of the home. So I have to park in the back of the alley with my little one, and we walk around the front of the home. Now, every day I have to make that walk, and every day I have to be mindful of traffic, of course. But seeing the development coming to this area where I every day make a walk to and fro is an increased concern of danger for my family and for traffic. So increasing it is already kind of a busy alley just because of the amount of homes that it backs up to. And seeing an increased traffic between construction. I work in property management, so I understand what a construction job entails. And having that introduced with the mess that is construction, along with having to make sure that my human is safe, I have big concerns about them developing this area. And to be honest with you, there are two very beautiful trees that house a lot of birds. And there is why I acknowledge it is not the most beautiful alley. It is a beautiful place to sit back in the evening and enjoy the little bit of green that we have around here. So it's not, well, I do acknowledge it's not the prettiest, and I try my best to pick up the trash that I see. It is still our alley, and it's a place that I call my backyard that I would have big concerns to see developed in a way that is just sought to make money. And I acknowledge here we are, but we didn't get talked to, and we got introduced to. She introduced her, hi, it's just Katie and Ben. To those, I know that we've been introduced, but they've never had deep conversations with us about the development. I understand my time is ending here. And I do appreciate their bigger goal. It's not about honoring anyone's name. I think they're looking to make an investment in their community, and there are concerns that the neighbors do have. Thank you.
And I think, it'll be important if you can share your contact info, or if Commissioner Jones, is this in your SMD, Commissioner Jones?
Yes, it is.
If you can share your contact info so then people can get in touch about this, because I think those are important concerns. I will stress, though, tonight we are simply looking at the name, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but I also hear your concerns. They're very, very understandable and valid, and we want to make sure that we can help address those when the time comes to. Next, Cedric, if you can go ahead and promote the next person. Commissioner Jones, if you can also get ready for the timer, and then Commissioner Sycamore, I will circle back to you after this person.
Hi, my name's Jamie. I actually live under Ben and Katie. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So when Amy was talking, she said she spoke to several of the neighbors in our neighborhood. We actually have a group chat and all of us have been texting as Amy was speaking. None of us heard from Amy regarding naming the alleyway. So I have a couple questions, and Tucker, maybe you can help with addressing some of this. So with naming the alley, is this step one of several steps of building the garages into a residential living area?
Yes, that is the intention. My understanding is that that is the intention of the developers.
Okay, so if that is the intention, I would like to say as a neighbor in this area, I completely object to this being named. Not because the lady who's we're trying to name it after she sounds like a great person. However, as Katie, my neighbor above me, addressed, I don't think it's to honor this person. I think it's to build on these lots. So as a neighbor in this community, I completely object to naming the alleyway. And I think that better communication needs to occur in the future from Amy and the developers in this area of actually talking to people who live in the neighborhood.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Jones, is this in a historic district?
Not to my awareness, no.
Okay. Yeah, I think to your point, Jamie, so as a commissioner who was working on kind of development that happened in an alley, granted, very different. I think the only similarity is that it happened or is happening in an alley. There was very, very, very extensive outreach that was done. Granted, I think it's a much larger development, so it's slightly different here. But the steps are similar. Typically what happens is that it's if it is in a historic district, which 1B, we do have some in the commission. U Street is one, LaDroit Park is one. There are some other parts as well too. And then at that point, that would go in front of what's called the Historic Preservation Review Board. That is a chance for the ANC to help weigh in. There's also another step where, depending on what the developer is seeking, if they're seeking any sort of relief, which Meredith and kind of Amy mentioned that they would be, depending on the relief, and it might go in front of BZA or the zoning commission if they're seeking something larger. But then the ANC would also have a chance to weigh in at that point. That's typically the steps that are followed. But I think you raise a concern that also is, I seeing a couple of other comments, Meredith or Amy, can you speak to do you have any letters of support from neighbors? Do you have, can you tell us how many neighbors you've reached out to and have connected with and then have said, how many people voted on the name that you chose?
Sure. So this is Meredith. We don't have any specific letters of support. We had presented to the subcommittee, and that had been noticed with the ANC when we discussed the alley name. We had then had a conversation with Commissioner Jones of having a Zoom community meeting, which we still plan on doing. And it seems like from the two individuals that have expressed concerns, the majority of the concerns are not about the specific alley name, but rather the development process and, construction and issues to that effect. And so we are committed to engaging with the community, reaching out, having multiple meetings with them. We will have to go through a BZA application for this development. So there will be public comment, opportunities for these individuals to weigh in. But we also we had come and presented to the ANC last month and wanted to ensure to kind of move forward with the alley name if there was no specific objections to the name itself, and then start the development conversation with the community, which we acknowledge has not been done yet to the extent the neighbors are expressing and to the extent that we would expect to be done.
Okay, and I think that makes sense in terms of the name. I think in what you're saying and what I'm picking up on is that the name isn't necessarily tied to a set, like this is step one, this is step two, it's not tied. So I think though, I don't know, it is a little concerning. I think one of the community members, and I don't mean to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think and this is me, I guess, spitballing, but it almost seems, I think this is what you describe. I think this is an important person in our history. I think it's a great name. I will say though, I hope that it's not just performative, that it's just kind of checking a box per se. But I think what needs to be done is maybe further community outreach. I think it's not, it doesn't sit well with me that there's more than, one neighbor saying that no one has reached out. So Commissioner Jones, and then
Chair, on that note, I can put the resolution back up, but the draft resolution includes a clause that ANC 1B's support for naming this alley is contingent on the holding of a public meeting, virtual and or in person, with residents of homes with addresses in the 2600 blocks of 11th Street Northwest and Sherman Avenue Northwest, and the 1000 blocks of Euclid Street Northwest and Fairmont Street Northwest, to validate the choice of name and, if necessary, make adjustments to the proposed name, with this public meeting being held no later than July 31st, 2023. So the proposed.
But I guess my question though back, and sorry to just interrupt really quickly here though, is why wouldn't we just have them host the meeting before we vote on something? Especially if community members do want to voice what they would like the street named to be. I guess I'm a little confused if this isn't something that they need immediately from us.
Perhaps Meredith or Amy can explain the sequencing that they're attempting.
Sure. So, Chairwoman Harrison, to answer your question specifically, the alley naming process is a long process. It has to go through the ANC, and then we have to go to the council. The council has to then review it and approve it. And so this thing makes the alley naming process may take many, many months, 8 to 10 to 12 months. And so, obviously that is something that we would like to get started on. Obviously, we understand that this is not directly tied to any development itself. Any development, will have to go through other review procedures, as we've said, and we'll have to come back to the ANC, and we're going to have to meet and discuss and have extensive conversations and dialogue with the neighbors. So, we felt as though this was an opportunity to move forward with the name. We had not heard, and I have not heard tonight, any objection to the name itself, and then to allow for us to have meetings with the community and to have those conversations.
Hey, I just wanted to add in, I just was looking at my notes. I've spoken with 27 people on the adjacent block. I'm not, since I don't live there, I do not have access to a text chain, so I'm sorry about that. I've offered everybody that I've ever met on the street the opportunity to walk in the back and discuss it. A lot of people have reached out to me directly about the development itself, but again, I thought we were here talking about the name, which I've talked to about so many people, and people just seemed excited about it. So I guess if the folks who are on here are not happy with the name, that's certainly something we're happy to discuss a different name, but we were here to seek approval of the name. And then, as Meredith said, there's a whole other part of this process that has to do with the actual development, the BZA. I mean, I'm happy to take the question to say, would I be naming an alley unless we were doing development? No. I mean, we have to name the alley to be able to develop it. And right now we're seeking the ability to have community feedback so that everybody's happy with and excited about what the name might be to honor somebody who's from the community.
Sure. And I think the concern that we all have, or not we, I have, that I've seen some commissioners nod their heads along with, is that there hasn't been adequate community outreach that was done just for the name. So that does raise at least our concerns, our radar that, okay, is this what it could look like even when you all really need kind of community engagement? I think though, I appreciate, Amy, that you're kind of bringing it back. I think it's important that we do focus on the naming piece. So but I don't know. I am concerned that there's no community members here who are like, yeah, we love the name. If you talk to 27 people, like, again, as someone who has gone through a pretty intensive development process, particularly around Denali, there were frequent folks who chimed in and said, if they supported it or if they were opposed to it.
Yeah, I mean, we did have a meeting prior, spoke with Commissioner Jones, and I thought that that we had those discussions prior, and then there was going to be some further stuff that was supposed to happen a couple of nights ago that I guess that process didn't happen because somebody was out of town, but because there was nobody who seemed to be upset about Alma Thomas being somebody who was honored, it was suggested that we come here to this meeting. So I mean,
yeah, and I mean, I think
put out flyers and do all kinds of things that we're still doing, like as a condition of Mr. Jones's wording in his document.
Sure. And I see your hands up, Commissioner Kinsick and Commissioner Sycamore. I just want to circle to Patrick since he's had his hand up for a bit. And then Jamie, if you can confirm if you still have a comment or if that was from your previous hand raise. And after Patrick is taken off of mute, Commissioner Kinsick and Sycamore, and then let's see if we're ready to vote on this. Cedric, if you can take Patrick off of mute.
Madam Chair, may I have 15 seconds before Patrick speaks?
Sure.
Patrick, I know that at a previous meeting, you raised the question of whether the alley needs to be named at all. That was a good question. And the applicant checked in with the Department of Buildings, who gave us a reading of the rules that strongly implies, I can't really read it any other way, but that the alley needs to be named before any further development steps can be taken.
Okay, well, that was the point that I was going to make, and I was going to ask that question directly to Meredith since I've dealt with her before on other projects. I have a real issue with, and I can verify that with DOB too. I don't understand why and who has told you that you need to have an alley named when the lots that you are trying to build on have street addresses already. I can tell you for a fact that if you go across Sherman on my block, there are 2 buildings that are being constructed right now on an alley that went through the BZA process to have some modifications done, and their address is on the street in front of their building, not directly, but connected to it. The alley is not named. They never had to come before the ANC for a naming of an alley. This is, and I've dealt with a number of alley structure buildings. Table's issue that it relates to the PUD that we did is a whole separate thing because that alley already had a name and it's part of a bigger construction. The real issue for me is what is the rationale behind why either DOB, and like I said, I can look into it myself, or the developer or whoever is saying that you have to have. I just don't agree with that, especially since the lots have street addresses that abut Euclid.
Chair, point of order, please, Chair.
Please continue, Mr. Nelson.
I'm finished. If he wants to say something, he can.
Commissioner Kinsick.
Secretary Jones, you've been by far one of the best, if not the best commissioner to work with. I appreciate you. I know you do your due diligence. After seeing what happened with 1617 V or U Street and 1620 B Street, and just getting the kind of the same feedback, it's nothing what Amy or Meredith are saying. I think it's great. I think it's a great name. All for it. But to Patrick's point, to Chair's point, to L. Frazier's point, there's just too many people who have too many points, and that makes me have to say that if the vote is raised tonight, I'd have to be a no, not because of the name, just because I don't feel like there's enough. Not everyone is fully involved with this, and it needs to be. That's all. Thank you.
Commissioner Sycamore.
Yes, Commissioner Kensick took all the words right out of my mouth. Yes, just echo the exact same sentiment as Commissioner Kensick.
Okay, Cedric, can you take Jamie Dolly off of mute? And Commissioner Jones, if you can set the timer.
I just wanted to echo, it'll be really quick. I just wanted to echo what everyone had just said, and come back to Chairperson Harris's point as to the fact that none of the neighbors have been notified of this name, to see if we can postpone naming the alleyway so that we are all better informed on name choices and what's going on. That's all. Thank you.
We do not have to vote on this. I realize, and Cedric, if you can take all of the parties who are not panelists off. We do not have to vote on this tonight. I realize that this is a very long process. Again, I don't mean to keep bringing up 1250 U Street. There is an alley closing that is happening there, and that is a very long process as well. I think, though, Commissioner Jones, I think further due diligence is required. I remember, and maybe you have an answer to this, but I do remember last meeting or the meeting prior to that, I was trying to look at our agendas that this was raised, and Patrick brought up the point that the alley does not need to be named. Although I think it is a good point of community engagement to ensure that community members feel like their voice is heard, at least on a historic component. But I would appreciate kind of any insights that you find of if it is required, what that process looks like, and if that can be conveyed to community members. I know that you were also out for a bit there, and I think it's important to maybe go back to these community members who have raised their concerns. Again, I want to stress to community members, this is just on the name. We're not at the zoning portion yet. Obviously we want to make sure that process is, your voices are heard there. But I don't know. There are a lot of concerns, and for a project this size, it's enough that's bubbling up that I'm like, might want to revisit this. Commissioner Holohan.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone's comments tonight. I would just like, before Commissioner Jones makes a motion or withdraws a motion and goes back to work on this, I don't want to send him back on some wild goose chase. I would like there to be some type of metric that would meet success here. If they've talked to 27 different neighbors in this one square block, I don't know what would meet satisfaction for everyone here. Is it half the neighbors? Is it 75% of the neighbors? I want to be fair to the people who are involved in this process. I want to be fair to Commissioner Jones. And frankly, I don't want this process used as an exercise to block development on its face. If people have an issue with development, that's a separate issue. And I hope that commissioners and people who are here today participating and who have commented today can understand these are two separate things. The naming of the alley does not mean that there has to be development, but yes, it clearly is a way to do that. Blocking the naming of this alley should not be what people are trying to do just because they oppose development. And that is something that I just want people to remember when this motion comes back before us.
Thank you. Thank you for that point. I think it is a very good one. And I think, yeah, we should stress that this is on the name. I think what is my prime concern is that there's no data points that say we like this neighbor said they like this name and this neighbor said they like this name. Instead, I'm hearing data points that we didn't even know we had a voice in naming this. I could be wrong though. I'm only seeing what I'm seeing in the Q&A. So Commissioner Jones.
Madam Chair, is there a motion on the floor?
There's no one raised a, did you raise a motion?
I don't believe so.
There is no motion on the table. We don't have to withdraw. We don't have to vote on anything. I think though, to Commissioner Holohan's point, if we have a plan in place of here's, what we're going to do, I think that neighbors would appreciate that. And I think fellow commissioners would also appreciate that.
Here, here.
Commissioner Jones?
Sure. My hope was that this developer would flyer all the houses in the area. I understand that they got to some of them, but not all. My intention is to organize a virtual or in-person or hybrid meeting within the next month, hopefully not longer than that, to discuss possible names for this alleyway. And I will make sure that all the people who spoke today from the area, including but not limited to Katie and Benjamin, Jamie, Seth, Elle Frazier, Shannon, and whoever else is relevant. If I did not call your name out and you're interested, please email me at 1bo9@anc.dc.gov and let me know. I will also make sure that this gets properly flyered, etc. But as there's no motion on the floor right now, I have nothing further to say.
I think, and apologies, I think, yeah, that's exactly, I think, what we were looking for. If I may add, if your name wasn't called or your name was called, if you can please just drop your email into the chat to make it easier for Commissioner Jones. Or yes, please email him immediately. Having kind of access to email will make planning these things a lot easier. And for the developers, I understand that this isn't the outcome that you were looking for tonight. I think it just raises my own concerns that we've had feedback from multiple neighbors for a block this size saying that they haven't heard from you all. So I think we have a good path moving forward. Commissioner Jones, if there's anything that I can help with, please let me know, especially coming off of kind of 1250 U Street. Again, different project, different sizes, similar alley dwellings. And I will also do my best to see if there's anything in terms of what Mr. Patrick Nelson was saying, if there's anything I can find on that. Are there any other comments? Are there any other items in new business? Questions? Okay. Hearing none. With that, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:08 p.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair.